Hey, January 9th, Lake of the Ozarks Fishing Report, brought to you by James and Denisdale Guide Service. Man, we're falling right into winter patterns now. You know, the water temp has dropped down low 40s to upper 30s. So it's got pretty much all the fish, relating to wintertime patterns. So it's making it a lot easier as far as, locating fish and, what baits to use to catch them. In the last couple weeks, the bites really increased and really gotten a lot better. As that has happened, a lot of the fish that were maybe still spread out a little bit have all kind of condensed down to your winter banks. Our water level is right at 656.96, I think. So we'll just say 657. So that's pretty much exactly 3 foot below full pool. That's kind of a winter drawdown we go through every year. We haven't really started that drawdown, so from what I'm hearing, we can expect a couple more feet anyways. What that does a lot, it does a couple things. Obviously, less water, there's less water for these fish to be, so they're going to be, more grouped up on some of these winter banks, which are your steeper banks right now. Steeper banks, but on each end of it, say if you're going back into a creek, a major creek, is pretty much where we're trying to focus right now and catch most of our fish. But if you're going back in a major creek and you really watch your channel swings or your contour lines on your mapping, like the Garmin, I'll just zoom in on my Garmin's. Their mapping's really good, and kind of look through a creek and just find where it gets real steep, whether it be on either side. You just kind of follow that steepness through the creek. If you zoom out and then zoom it in slowly, you'll see these contour lines, how they're really spread out, and then they'll get real tight on certain little sections of that creek. Well, that's where you want to focus on. And as you're going in, there'll usually be like a small point going into a pocket, and that's where kind of it'll swing up, and you'll see them real tight contour lines from that point, and then contour lines go down that bank, and then they'll kind of spread out. So it's the front section of that channel swing, and then the back section. Usually that front is a little steeper point, secondary point, which is always really good to start on, especially if the wind's blowing. But then as you get further back into that creek, you'll notice those contour lines start spreading out. And that's where that channel bank or steep bank goes along, and then it starts kind of flattening out. And a lot of times them fish will either bunch up on that front end, on the point part, or they'll kind of feather down to where it starts to flatten out, depending on what they're feeding on. Maybe if we have a warm up, several days of real warm, sunny days, a lot of times they'll tend to go to that shallower side of that channel swing, kind of where it starts flattening out. Maybe the shad go down there, maybe some crawfish come out, whatever. Bluegills start moving up on those flats. But like I said, normally, like we'll just say this past Saturday, Denise and I fished the Bass and Bob Winter Series out of Alhana. They had 73 boats, so it tells you, usually when fishing's pretty good, a lot of people show up, or everybody's been cooped up for the holidays and all the family functions, and just everything's busy in December. So anyway, it drew a lot of boats, and there was a lot of fish caught. Not really surprised how many fish were caught and the amount of fish, but there was quite a few fish caught Saturday. But I'll just kind of walk you through our entire day, and that'll give you a pretty good idea if you're coming down and you want to go out and just catch fish, if you're looking for big fish, or just kind of how to maybe plan your attack on catching some fish. Normally, like say when that water's warmer, or we're in the fall or spring, summer, really, you'll hit a lot of spots or a lot of banks. You might hit 12, 15 banks in a day, your productive banks. Well, Saturday, Denise and I, we counted up, Saturday night after the tournament, we hit 5 banks the entire day, and we really slowed down, and we hit these banks real thorough, and we were really trying to figure out what it was that when we got a bite, why we got a bite right there. Now, first thing, early in the morning, we ran, I don't know, up around just below Hurricane Deck in that area, and when we got up there, that water temp was 38 in the morning, so pretty cool. But it's been kind of gradually coming down. We got that cold snap and it really dropped, so that kind of shocked them fish for a while. But now it's kind of stabilized, and it's going to stabilize around, I don't know, from 37 to 42, for the next several weeks probably, unless we get another major cold snap. But these fish are getting comfortable now, and they'll bite in that cold water. And most of our fish, I think our deepest fish, which was our biggest fish, which was a 594, came in about 8 foot of water. That was the deepest fish we caught all day. So that kind of tells you, at 38 degrees, these fish will move up shallow and they'll feed. So in the morning, we started off with some stick baits. We went down the bank, had a little breeze on it, and we caught 3 keepers pretty quick. And we were throwing a different, both were throwing different stick baits. I was throwing the old Smithwick Rogue, the clown color. It's just been a staple down here for years and years. I've seen a lot of reinsurgence of the Smithwicks. These are the oldest, probably, I don't know if it's correct term, but I'm going to say probably one of the original suspending jerkbaits, if not the original suspending jerkbaits. When they first started making them, they floated up like crankbaits do, and we started weighting them with lead wire, or like this one here, you can see he's got one of them suspended strips on it, and we would suspend them so they would suspend, not sinking, not falling, and not rising. We just wanted them suspended, just suspend equal. Now people are doing different things with jerk baits where you weight them so they slightly sink. If you see if you're using your Garmin live scope and you see a brush pow and 18 foot, well, these aren't going to get down there unless you weight them so they slightly sink. You don't want them to sink real far or sink in an odd position, like straight up and down one way or the other. You want them to sink just horizontal. At least I do. I want them to sink straight down, and so I can watch them on my live scope. When they get down just above or at that brush, that's when I'll give it a couple twitches, and then after you give it twitches, that thing will turn sideways, do a little flash, rattle a little bit, get their attention, and you can kind of read those fish. And if you get a fish that rises up out of that brush, that's going to tell you can probably catch that fish. Not always. Saturday we seen a lot of fish later in the day when we were trying to maybe target some deeper brush piles, or once we had 5 fish and we were looking for some big ones, we seen a lot of fish come up out of them brush piles, and you can see them come up just about nose to that bait, and they turn and they go back down. So that's a little frustrating when you see a nice fish come out of that brush pile and look at your stick bait, but that just tells you it's the wrong sound, maybe the wrong size, the wrong color. You just kind of got to go through a trial and error until you maybe see what creates a reaction. So either way, so in the morning, we went down a bank, we caught, I think the first pass we had 3 keepers for about 6.5 pounds. Nothing major. Like I said, I was throwing that clown. Denise was throwing Vision 110. She was throwing the Pro Blue, Megabass 110. If you notice, that has a little louder thumping noise compared to like the Smithwick, has a little more rattle like BBs. So just that little subtle sound difference can make a big difference. In getting a bite or attracting their attention. The Smithwicks, I'll say they'll go probably on 8 pound fluorocarbon, and you can watch them on your live scope. They'll get down 7, 8 foot, maybe 9 foot. And where the mega bass, they seem to hover around 5 or 6, unless you have them weighted. Just a little bit depth makes a big difference sometimes. And then there's different, other stick baits, obviously, that you'll want to try while you're out there fishing. 6 Sense makes a real good one. We've used it quite a bit. It comes with really good hooks, which you don't have to switch out. Hooks is great. They have some really good painted colors. So we've been using some of the 6 Sense. The Lucky Crafts, I still use a lot of Lucky Crafts. Here I've got one of the Pointer 78 in Aurora Black. This thing has caught more fish, probably, I don't know, it's caught a lot of fish down here throughout the years for me. A lot of times we'll crappie fish with this, but a lot of times you'll catch some big bass on this little Pointer 78, where maybe they're feeding on them smaller shad and not necessarily them big gizzard shad for whatever reason. You just got to figure out what they want. If they're maybe if they've been pressured, or they've seen baits, or they're not really aggressive mood and they don't want one of these bigger stick baits, they'll key in and they'll go ahead and attack like the Pointer 78 the Lucky Craft makes. So another one of them deals got a little different sound in it, that may trigger the baits or trigger the bite. So you just kind of got to go through a series of testing different baits. You might go out with 4 rods and reels set up with 4 different stick baits, and maybe try to find yourself a brush pile and work that brush pile with all 4 baits and see if one gets bites, if one gets the fish to come up and look at it and go back down, and if one gets them to attack it. You can really see, and I'm even still learning myself quite a bit on how these fish will react to certain stick baits. You'll see them come right up out of that brush pile right away. Other times you got to let it sit on top of it, just sit still, and you'll see them kind of creep up. You can learn a lot about how these fish are reacting when you really watch your bait on these live scope. If the live scope has taught me anything, it's taught me how to read fish better that we couldn't see. Obviously we couldn't see them fish in the years past, but now we can study these fish and really see how they react to certain baits, whatever it is, whether it be a fallen jig or stick baits or crankbaits or Alabama rig, whatever it is. You can see and study these fish, how they'll react to your bait, and really learn a lot about their feeding habits. So, the live scope, to me, it's just one of probably the most incredible tool that we've ever gotten in the fishing industry. It's really teaching us a lot about fish, not necessarily seeing the cover or seeing the contour lines or seeing drops or reading bluffs, but reading the fish that we couldn't do before, which nowadays is just incredible technology. I can't wait to see what they come out with next, and they're going to. So but either way, on these stick baits, just pick a different baits. Try to pick different colors, some that are flashy, some that are dull color. Maybe some that have, like the Table Rock Shad has that chartreuse, purple back. That's a real good one to go to. Maybe if it's cloudy, overcast, I tend to lean towards the bright colors, compared to if it's, say, if it's a real clear day, then I might throw this Wakasaki. It's kind of more transparent, kind of a gold back purple, clear water. I may throw something like that. So just change up your stick baits and try different ones, and work your bait different. Even though it was 38, 40 degrees, someday they want that bait just steadily moving, and not necessarily sitting still. I see that a lot. These fish get real aggressive, and you let it sit too long or too slow, that's when they'll look at it. Compared to if you're steadily working it, that's when they'll come up and grab that thing. So even though it's cold, work it fast, work it slow, stop it. Just go through a series of retrieves until maybe you see what these fish are doing. So anyway, so that was our morning, we went down this bank. Obviously, we went down it. We caught 3 keepers pretty quick, and then we went back down and thought surely we'll catch another fish or two. So we slowed down with some bottom baits, and I don't think we caught any more on that bank. Believe it or not, we had 3. So we kind of fished that. We probably spent a little more time, probably 2 hours on that bank. Knew there was fish there. We could see the fish, but they bit that first pass, and then for whatever reason they didn't want to feed anymore. So we ran on to our second bank. I'm trying to think. Okay, we went still in that same area, so that water was 38, and there was a lot more docks on this particular bank, but it was still the exact same type of channel swing, steep bank. We threw stick baits a little bit. No luck on that stick bait, and we went to the bottom. Denise was throwing the half-ounce zapper. Actually, her rods are still in here, but she was throwing the half-ounce zapper Ozark craw with a pecca chunk on it on the back. She's been throwing this pecca chunk, which is a little kind of I'll just call it a beefier trailer with 2 twin, legs on it, tail, whatever you want to call them, pinchers. Little thicker, little meatier bait on a half-ounce jig, and she actually caught probably our second biggest fish. It was probably 3.25. That gave us 4 fish on that jig, and it was behind the cable in about probably 5 foot of water. Steep bank, pretty gradual, at least 45 degrees. Maybe if you can find a bank that's got a series of little shelves in it that fall down. Say your boat's, if you're a good flip off the bank and you're 15 foot of water and you're flipping to the bank, and there's a couple series of small shelves, drops. Those are usually your good ones, because them fish will tend to hang right at that next drop or that next step on those little shelves. Anyway, so she caught a nice 3.25 pounder, that we got in. So that gave us 4 fish. Then we fished that bank pretty hard. Caught a couple shorts, a few more shorts. Then we started going through those 14.75, fish. There's a lot of those fish in the lake right now. I mean, a lot. You're going through a lot of 14.5 to 15.25. There's just a lot of fish in the lake that size. So, the lake's healthy. It's looking good, and for the future anyways. In the next 2, 3, 4 years, we're going to have a good population of those 3 to 5 pounders. So anyway, she caught that fish on that jig, and we went ahead and we fished quite a bit on that section. Decided to leave there, ran to our next spot. That say a week and a half ago, I was in that area with a friend, and man, they were packed in there. So I just knew in my mind we're going to do good. We're going to catch number 5 and probably call a couple times. And this little creek, this is just a little creek, sets up good. It's on a major river channel. Swing bumps both points of this creek, and that creek goes back in there about a half a mile. So anyway, we went down that bank, went down both sides, went down it twice, and we never caught a fish. So that's how fishing changes, how they move, how sometimes they bite, sometimes they don't. I could see the fish everywhere in this creek. They were moving around. There was shad in there. Everything was perfect, but we didn't get a bite in there. So, now we're probably noon, 1 o'clock, and we ran on back down lake, probably somewhere around racetrack area, if you know where that's at. That's probably 29 mile marker. And we fished a couple creeks down there. We went in, and we went down a stretch. We got a lot of history on, but it's just still exactly like I told you, a series of, we come up to a point, a secondary point, a channel swing, big rocks, big boulders, almost bluffy looking creek bluffs. Can be extremely productive, and then it just kind of tapers down to basketball size, and baseball, and pea gravel. So you get everything in one stretch, which is about 200 yards long. Those are just my favorite stretches this time of year. you can fish everything in 200 yards and maybe kind of key in on where they're at or how they're feeding. So the way the direction the wind was blowing, we went to the shallow part, the flatter pea gravel, and we started working our way back up that bank. We got about halfway up, probably, I don't know, basketball size, little pea gravel mix, believe it or not, right at the end of the real steep. And we caught another keeper, nice solid keeper. So that gave us our 5. That was 130. Just caught a few more sharks along that bank. A couple on stick baits, a couple on the jig. I was throwing, at that time I was throwing, things were seemed to be pretty tight. I went down to my 3/8 ounce Ozark crawl. You see I have it all spidered up. You know, that bait's all spidered up, real small profile. Cut my ring crawl down just a little bit, you know, to usually when the bite's really, really slow for whatever reason, I can really, you know, I seem to get more bites on a small profile jig, just a small, you know, finesse jig. Denise was still throwing her 1/2 ounce. Like I said, we caught a few shorts. I caught another keeper, I don't know, 2.5 pounder. And we went on down. And throughout the day, I had been switching back and forth from my jig to my swamp bug. I was throwing the green pumpkin red flake swamp bug. Caught a few on that, some of them 14 inchers. Just wasn't getting the bites I normally get. And we kind of got to the steeper part of this bank. Now we're probably, it was 2:30. Weigh-in was at 3:30. And I switched up and I put on my moss candy swamp bug, which I had been throwing it off and on all day. Caught a couple short fish on it. I had caught one other keeper on it. So anyway, so we caught one more keeper on this swamp bug on the moss candy, which we was able to call out a Kentucky we had. So that was our 6th keeper. We had 5 in the box, but we had about 12 pounds, maybe 11 and 3/4, 12 pounds. Not great, you know. And we knew, you know, there was going to be a bunch of those, you know, 11, 12 pound limits. Anyway, we got to the end of that, towards the end of that channel swing on that little secondary point, drug that swamp bug out there about 8 foot and felt just some heavy weight. You're not going to feel bite, just some heavy resistance. I set the hook and it was at 594. So that made our day, kind of got us up there in the 15 something range. Wasn't sure. I thought 15 something will be on the border of getting a check. But that 594 I thought might have a chance of big fish. So anyways, we finished out. I think we finished out the day on that bank, ran on in, weighed our fish. We had 1540, I think, somewhere around there. And we had big bass for quite a while. Then Mike Scott and Jack Uxa brought in their bag, and they had something somewhere around that weight, but they had a 630. So lost big bass to that. And anyways, all in all, what I'm getting at, we had a really good day as far as winter fishing. We thought we put ourselves in a position to do real well. One more call, we would have at least been in check range and maybe a little higher. But that's kind of how our day went. We hit 5 banks total. So if you're coming down fishing now, just slow down, just really slow down. When I caught that big fish, I was hardly moving that swamp bug. The line was tight, and I was just barely giving it a move, just letting the thing sit there in the zone, in the strike zone, or in front of a fish as long as I could. Throughout the day, as you're moving your baits and you watch it on a live scope, you can see fish literally following your bait. Every time you move it, the fish moves, and it moves right behind that bait, and you're like, take it, just bite that thing, you know, and them fish just move. Every time you move it, they move. And it's just really weird how sometimes they'll pick it up and sometimes they'll just follow that thing until you bring it up. So either way, that caused me to really slow down, just pop that swamp bug, get that tail to turn, and come back to the bottom and stand there, sit there in front of them, and do something trying to get that fish to eat that bait. So just really, really slow down if you're on the bottom, um, and just keep it really simple this time of year. Just rig you up a few rods with jigs, swamp bugs. Yesterday we went out again. We're getting ready to go out again right now. We got the boat, everything hooked up, and I had a chance to throw the Crappie new shorty, which is going to be their kind of version of the Ned rig. Where in the past years I've taken like your mag finesse worm and I've cut it down and put it on. I'll rig my Ned rig, we'll call it a Ned rig, a little different. I don't have the exposed tick. I have the Crappie 3/16 shaky football, and I'll rig it on that to where you can rig it up weedless, so you can bring it through brush and rocks, mainly brush, without getting it hung up like with an exposed hook. But you can see that's rigged on there. It rigs up just perfect on that 3/16. It's perfectly straight, and I've got this rigged up on a spinning rod and reel setup. I've got 30-pound braid, and then I've got 8-pound fluorocarbon on there, leader, and then you got your 3/16 shaky football with the little shorty. And man, you can really, if you're having trouble feeling bites or feeling what that bait's doing, especially if you go with a lighter bait like this, with that braid and a spinning rod and reel, this is my Falcon spinning rod. It's extremely sensitive with that braid. You can feel everything that bait's doing. And I actually caught a couple on it yesterday, and today I'm really going to fish it a lot. I haven't gotten to use it a lot, to build up some confidence in it, and that's today's goal, is to go out, build a little bit of confidence in that bait. I know I'm going to catch them on my zapper jig. I know I can catch them on that swamp bug. I just want to add something else into the arsenal for winter time, and this new shorty, I'm sure is going to be make the cut for one of the baits that I use throughout the days, especially on tournaments. So that's basically what we used the entire day of a tournament day. We're going to go out just fishing. We're going to use the exact same baits, but we're going to add other things into it today, since we're out there just kind of to learn today, to see what might get us more bites, maybe what makes these fish react a little bit. I've got the Vision 110 Plus on today, which is going to go a little deeper. We're going to mess with suspending, some stick baits, some different colors. You can see it's sunny today, so we'll probably have to use some different colors, maybe that weren't so bright. Maybe add a little more flash. I expect these fish to be a little higher in the water column today, since we've had a few days of warm, and maybe that water, heating up them rocks, that sunshine beating down that water will bring some fish up. All your fish right now, all your females have eggs already. The crappie we're catching, they've got eggs, and basically what I'm getting at, when they've already gotten eggs, I know it's only January, but any chance these fish get to absorb some sun, my understanding is they'll come up and they'll absorb that sun to help what we call just cooking these eggs, and just soaking up that sunlight to get these eggs to mature. So that's kind of what I'm expecting today. Obviously, I don't have it out, but I've got an Alabama rig set up, so I'm going to play with that a little bit. Saturday, you couldn't throw the Alabama rig, so we didn't even get it out of the box. But today's a different story. We're going to play with it and see if some of the fish that would follow the stick bait and wouldn't grab it, maybe they'll grab the Alabama rig. So we're going to play with that a little bit today. But all now, we're going to go about today exactly like we did Saturday, and exactly like I'll tell you, if you're coming down to the lake in the winter, just pick you a creek, any creek on this entire lake. Probably at this point, maybe some of your lower gravois, glaze, maybe up to, I don't know, maybe the four-way there at Lane Creek. Once that water temp gets really, really low, the bite gets really tough. When it gets down in the mid 30s, you're getting tough. Not that you can't catch them, because you can, but it's going to be a lot slower compared to the lower lake, a little clearer. We're pretty lucky this year so far. That mid lake area is pretty clear, so it's expanding your lake compared to a lot of years. That'll be pretty dirty up in them river arms, but we haven't had the rain, so the entire lake's pretty clear, so you can go anywhere and throw certain baits that'll, like these stick baits that'll get reactions. The strike zone's a little longer or a little bigger, so more likely to get some bites and maybe some of that colder water. But if you're coming down, just keep it real simple. Go through the stick baits, go through your bottom baits, and if you're having trouble getting any bites on the bottom, I strongly suggest getting you a good spinning rail and spinning rod. Rig it up with some braid and a leader, and drag that and bounce a little bait, whether it be a jig, a small finesse crocketer bait, or a crocketer jig, spider jig, or maybe this little shorty worm, and just drag it along and feel that bottom and feel everything, and you'll know it, because this time of year you fish a lot on the bottom without bites. So when you do get a bite, or something changes, or something's different, go ahead and swing on them, set the hook, because a lot of fish this time of year, you're like, I'm not sure if that's a leaf or a fish, and you set the hook, and it's a good fish, and it might be a big fish. A lot of your bigger fish will just pick that bait up and hang on to it, or they'll just slightly swim, compared to your 13, 14 inches. A lot of times they'll bite that bait, they'll feel the little bites or movement. Compared to a big one, they just pick it up and move off. So just keep that in mind. Maybe get you a good spinning rod reel set up for wintertime, because you'll really enhance your feel. And if you can catch fish on the bottom baits, if you don't fish them a lot, your swamp bugs, jigs, things like that, if you can catch fish in the wintertime on jigs, you can catch them any time of year. So it's probably a good time to learn to fish the bottom and really spend a lot of time this time of year. There's no boats out there, big boats. It's calm, it's peaceful out there. So maybe fish a jig a lot more this time of year if you don't, and kind of teach yourself what it feels like just coming through the rocks and coming through brush, and really get into tune to what that bait's doing when there's not a fish on it. So you train your mind to know what that bait feels like coming through the water, and keep in contact with it, and really being in tune with what it does. Because when anything changes, that's most likely when a fish has it. And if you can't feel a bait, a lot of times, like I'll describe a typical bite in the winter, you feel that bait hitting them rocks, and you feel it, you feel the good positive feedback, and all of a sudden you've lost your bait. You can't feel it, and you're like, I should be able to feel that. Why aren't I feeling that bait? Well, it's because a fish has it, and you don't feel anything. You just don't feel anything. And set the hook. You go through a lot of just setting the hooks, and sometimes there's nothing there. Sometimes it's a leaf, but a lot of times you don't feel something, you set the hook, there's a fish on there. So just get yourself tuned that if something's not right, it doesn't feel like it has felt like for the last hour when I haven't caught something, set the hook, and there's probably going to be a fish on there. So come on down, enjoy the lake. If we can help you, Denise or I, in wintertime fishing, man, we'd love to. Right now is probably my favorite time to fish. I really like March when a lot of them are moving shallow, but right now it's pretty simple to what you're going to do, where you're going to fish. Crappie right now continues to be just phenomenal. We're fishing. You don't even have to shoot docks right now. There's hundreds and hundreds of crappie under these docks, these swim platforms. You can shoot underneath there and catch them. But we've been just finding offshore brush, offshore boat lifts, um, boulders, man, just some of the cross braces on some of these big docks. The crappie will suspend just underneath them, which is probably 8 foot of water, on some days. But just maybe go down bluffs and find you some brush. Just go in these creeks, these coves. Just run down it with your side scan or your down image, and see these crappie, or see a brush pile, or see something odd off of the bottom, and then just jump up there, drop your live scope, pan it, and you can see right away if there's crappie sitting on it. You'll see a lot of white bass right now. We're catching a lot of white bass that are schooled up on top. The white bass, I'll tell you, they look like a small piece of cotton, kind of roughy edges all the way around it. Compared to crappie, will be like a slash, like a little, not even a half moon, just a partial moon slash dash, real defined. Those are your crappie. Bass will be a little more kind of a cigar look, cigar shape. So you can you're getting into tune really of what species look like what. One thing I will tell you I do a lot is I will keep, even bass fishing, I will keep this little Kitech little swimmer, 3-inch swimmer, but I also keep like these Kitechs. This is a 4.5. This might be a little big. I like the 4-inch Kitechs rigged up on a little swim bait head, swim bait jig head. And if I see some fish and I'm not sure what they are around brush, I'll just throw this light line, light bait over them, and I'll bring it right over the top. And I don't care what it is, they normally will bite it. It might be a drum, white bass, little Kentuckies, largemouth, crappie, but it'll kind of tell you, okay, that's what's in this brush pile. That's what I'm seeing. And you can also learn. This is a perfect time to learn your live scope by looking at a certain fish and what they look like, and then throw a bait like this in there and bring it through and catch one of them fish. So then you can put together what it looks like on your screen, and then literally catch that fish, bring them to the surface, and see what it is, whether it's a white bass or whatever, and you'll get into tune to what those fish look like, and then you can catch one and bring it up, and then confirm your thought that that's what that is. So it's a good time to play with the live scope and figure out what one looks like, what fish look like, compared to what they actually are, if you can catch one. So a little swim bait is perfect for that. We've caught a lot of 3 and 4 pound bass on this little 3-incher crappie fishing here lately. I've talked to several other people that are doing the same, that you'll catch a lot of nice bass on this little bitty little swim bait, little Kitech. Are they coming in there because of that swim bait? Are they coming in there because you're pulling the crappie out of that brush pile and the bass are feeding on the crappie? I'm not real sure on that. It doesn't matter as long as I catch them. So that brings me into like this little Lucky Craft Pointer 78 is similar size. You may go down to something like that and catch some nice big bass compared to some of your full size stick bait. So just kind of switching it up back to my original point of you might have to downsize to catch some fish. But the crappie, we're basically throwing this. It's 6 pound test on a good crappie setup. There's a little 3-inch Kitech, little swimmer, or is it a little shiner? Easy shiner. Easy shiner is what that's called. Get you. I don't think it matters what color. We go through every color they've got and we catch them on all of it. Sometimes there is a chartreuse and blue one I like a lot if it's cloudy or a little dirtier water. But you throw this anywhere close to those brush piles, you can catch yourself just as many crappie as you want right now. Denise has been putting a hurting on these crappie lately, which is really good. We've been loading up our freezer again. We've had several fish fries. We had fish tacos the other night. So she come in about as fresh as you can get. They went straight from the knife to the pan, fish tacos. So, man, that's about all I can tell you right now. It's simple. It's simple now. The big key right now is just figuring out where they're at, on these banks. Are they on the steep, the bluffier stuff, or where it breaks down to boulders? Are they on a kind of pea gravel transition? I will say any transition at all from whatever type of rock. Shelf rock comes into play this time of year. A shelf rock to, say, softball size. Any transition is going to be a high percentage area. Slow down and fish those transitions really, really thorough right now. It's a high percentage area to get a bite now. And with the bite being slow, you want to figure it out and spend the most time you can in the most productive high percentage areas. If the wind's blowing, you get a little windy day, maybe stick to the points, secondary points. When I say secondary points, those are your points off a main lake. You're into a separate creek and you've got a series of secondary points. I'm going to say all points that are inside the creek, I'm going to consider a secondary point. So just the more defined that point is, with the wind blowing in on it, it's going to be a better point, more percentage, high percentage area. I would spend more time on those particular type of points than a long, slow, gradual point, because the more defined point, they're going to group them fish up a little more and increase your odds of catching a fish. That would be more of your stick bait stuff if the wind's blowing. If it's slick, calm, sunny, I'm going to be on the bottom with bottom baits doing what I like to do. So just keep those things in mind. I hope it helps. That's really all I got. Hopefully I've kind of broke it down that if you're coming down, you only get a day. You don't even get a day of practice, or you're just coming down to fish for a few hours. Hopefully you can come down, tie these baits on, watch your contour lines, and really watch in the creek. You can go to the very back of the creek and start your way out, hitting every steep bank, or you can start just inside the creek and hit everything and work your way to the back. Either way, that's where you want to fish, where you want to focus on. I heard they had a really good show at Collinsville this year. We've got a show coming up in Kansas City here next week, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend. This is the Fishing Expo. This is going to be the second year up there in Kansas City. So I'll keep you up to date more on that. But if you don't have any plans for that weekend, you're going to want to attend that. It's going to be a real good show. It's another fishing show and not a lot of just other stuff. It's going to be mainly focused on fishing. So that's, I believe it's the 19th, 20th, and 21st in Kansas City, the Kansas City Expo. Look it up online. But we'll be up there for both Crappie and Wholesale Batteries. Wholesale Batteries is going to be there, have all their batteries, their new lithiums. I'm getting lithium batteries this week for my boat. Can't wait to try them out and see them. These batteries, I've been running these Decas for 2 years. I have had zero problems with batteries. It's probably the first time in the last 30 years I haven't had issues with batteries. So they've got a new lithium. I'm looking forward to using those as often as we, come summertime, April through September. This boat's running every day. I'm not working ambulance. I'm on the water, guiding or preparing for our trips. And these batteries are constantly on and charge, off charge, wearing down. This fall, I stood on that trolling motor and tested these batteries. And I'm even saying to myself, it's going to be a test on these batteries if they're going to hold up or not. And they did. So my electronics, my setup's fairly simple compared to a lot of guys. I run a Garmin 1242 on my dash. I run a Garmin 1242 on my bow. I run live scope on the bow. So that's all I'm running on my boats, but they're both demanding electronics. And if you don't keep your voltage above about 10.9, we'll say 11 and above, you may start having issues. And I never dropped below about 10.4 this year. So that keeps my electronics working properly, giving me my best picture I possibly can. So other than that, as always, wear your life jackets in the wintertime. And come down, dress warm, get you some Africa Reapers. I don't have one on yet today. I will here shortly because I like to be able to pull that up and protect my face, keeping it from getting windburn. I like the hoodie. I like the adjustments. But either way, dress properly, come down, make a day of it, come down and enjoy some crappie fishing at least, and then mix in some bass fishing. Bass fishing is pretty good, pretty easy right now as far as what to do. Will you catch them? That's up to the fish. So until then, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate any subscriptions to the channel as possible. But until next time, we'll see you.